Hello, everyone. Here is Tatiana Bazzichelli from the Disruption Network Lab, and I'm very happy to welcome everyone at the Kunstquartier Bethanien here in Berlin, and also the audience that is following us online. The conference today is called Shadows of Illiberalism, Resisting the Radical Right. And of course, we also start with a really big challenge. Is it even possible to resist the radical right? What we are doing in these days is to explore the roots of right-wing extremism and also try to challenge its influence through art, activism, and tech. And the title is Shadows of Illiberalism. I took this idea of illiberalism from a speech of Viktor Orban that he gave in 2014 when he was defining Hungary as an illiberal democracy. And we want to investigate what are these illiberal democracies, and is the concept of illiberalism really something new, or is something that actually is part of liberalism, and the two things feed each other. This is a process that we are witnessing in the last years that is slowly dismantling civil rights, I would say also democracy itself, freedom of the press, and also many of the freedoms that we have been having for a long time. But also this is a question, what is even freedom, and were we always so free? So all these questions is what we want to bring in these 2 days. And I also really want to thank the speakers that came from different parts of Europe, Berlin, to speak in the world, to speak about these topics, each of them with very different challenges, also coming from countries that at the moment are under oppressions, also in terms of civic rights. And also want to thank our funders, the Hauptstadt Kulturfonds, that is the capital culture funds of Berlin and Germany. The Riva and David Logan Foundation, that is a foundation from Chicago. And we are part of New Perspective for Action, a project by Reimagine Europe that is co-funded by the European Union. I also want to thank the audience that is here despite the very great weather in Berlin. Suddenly we have summer, and the people that are following online. And I want to remind them that we have a chat that is active all the time during our conference, so they will be able to chat with our speakers and also ask questions during the panels and the keynotes. So for the people that are following online, I just remind to go on the website of the Disruption Lab, and from there you will find the chat, and we can bring your questions to our speakers during the question and answer. But now I would like immediately to go in the depth of our first event of today, that is the keynote with Franco Berardi and Yasmeen Daher. In these keynotes, we are discussing many topics, as we will see. There will be the discourse of exhaustion of white supremacy, but also the furious return of racism, as Franco Berardi puts it. And one of the big concepts that will be discussed will be the one about hyper-colonialism, also something that Franco Berardi is going to explain further. I want just to give a bit of technical instruction, just to make you understand. First, there will be the keynotes of Franco Berardi that will be followed by a response by Yasmeen Daher. There will be the dialogue among the two of them, And then Franco needs to leave at 5:45 because today is also the launch of his new book, Chaos and Automation, that is going to launch of Misread. So these two things together made the situation that he needs to leave a bit before, but there will be time for question and answers, and then I will join on stage Yasmeen, and we will go on with further questions. So the event will be the length that we supposed. But now I want to call on stage Franco Berardi and Yasmeen Daher, and while they're coming, I'm introducing them more deeply. Please. Welcome here at the Disruption Network Club. Very happy to have you here. Our conference number 35 is actually a big achievement for us, also considering the times to be still alive as an organization is something important. So first I want to introduce Franco Bifo Berardi. He's a philosopher and media theorist and was a key figure in the Italian autonomia movement of the 1970s. He's the co-founder of the magazine Attraverso and of Radio Alice, the first free radio station in Italy. He published around 20 books, translated in many languages, such as Ends, Phenomenology of the Ends, The Third Unconscious, and the most recent book is Chaos and the Automation that is going to be presented also today later. Then we have Yasmeen Daher, welcome. She is a feminist activist and a writer. She is the co-director and editorial director of Febrayer, a network of independent Arab media organizations based in Berlin. Yasmeen research sits at the intersection of political theory, ethics, and direct political action, all rooted in a commitment to feminist, social, and anti-colonial movements. So thank you both, and welcome here.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thanks you for coming. I want to start quoting a woman who was a Jew, a Christian, and a communist. Her name was Simone Weil. And in the year 1933, Simone Weil spoke a sentence that I want to repeat today. She told more or less the following words. For us, the greatest misfortune would be to die powerless, both to defeat the oppressor and to understand. This is a sentence that speaks of impotence. She said, in the year 1933, we can do nothing to stop the murderers, but we can try, at least, to understand. I repeat these words because I think that at the present, to be frank, I do not see a way to resist the new Nazis. I do not see a way to resist the oppressors of today. I used the word new Nazis, but I know it's too easy. The reality is much more complicated than so. So let's try to understand something of the present reality. The title of this meeting speaks of illiberalism. It's a a wonderful way to define some of the present problem. It is also, in a sense, an euphemism, a gentle euphemism. Euphemisms are good sometimes to define something of reality. And particularly, the use of the word illiberalism is useful because it gives us the possibility of understanding what is new and what is not so new in the present situation of Europe and in the present situation of the world. I think that illiberalism is just a part of our problem. It's true. In Europe, you have countries like Hungary, of course, that define themselves illiberal. Frankly, they define themselves illiberal democracies. And you have countries that try to avoid that definition and define themselves liberal democracies. For instance, Germany. I don't know exactly where should I place Italy in this definition. I would say much more illiberal than liberal, but the point is that the illiberalism of Italy is especially defined by the criminal policy of migration. You know that every month, every day, migrants try to escape the hell of Libya and try to come to the southern coasts of Italy, and many times they drown. Many times they are rejected back to the torture of Libya. Sometimes they are saved by boats, but the Italian government obliges this boat to go very, very far, to Genova, to Ancona, to places that oblige the boats to lose days that could be useful to save more people. Well, I define illiberal, and it is really an euphemism, the murderers of the Italian government that systematically, intentionally kill people who try to save their lives, quite simply. But then I have a second thought, and I ask myself, but who is the strategist, the inventor, the creator of this legislation of criminals that is killing people, that is obliging people to stay in the jails and in the torture of Libya? Who is? What is his name? I know what is his name. The name is Marco Minniti. Marco Minniti, the criminal mind that has created the fascist, racist law that is daily murdering people in the Mediterranean, was and is a democratic, he would say. I am a liberal democratic. He was part of the Democratic Party before he was part of the Communist Party, to be more precise. Now he is the CEO of a very important industry that produces, guess what? Weapons, armed system, and so on. So where is the difference between the illiberal Meloni, the criminal illiberal Salvini, and the democratic Minniti? I don't see the difference so well. So I start thinking that the distinction between illiberal and liberal is less and less marked and interesting because the real problem, what is the real problem? What are we talking about? That is a good question. What are we talking about? What is happening at a larger scale? My answer is we are living in a time of exhaustion, a time of exhaustion of the white civilization. White, I say this word, this horrible word that means nothing, of course. Do you think that a white race exists? Of course, we know that the racial definition does not define anything. Nevertheless, we know that there is a white mythology, a mythology of supremacy, a mythology of superiority, cultural, military, political, human superiority that gives us, the white people, the right to kill, to murder, to colonize, to submit, to exploit, to extract, to destroy, in order to be superior. But this superiority is crumbling for many reasons, you know. In my opinion, a very important reason of the crisis, of the decline of the white superiority lies in the demographic dimension. The demography, yes. This neglected science, you remember Marx ridiculing Malthus. He was right, Marx, to ridicule Malthus 2 centuries ago. Now demography is not really cool. For some reason that we should be able to understand what's happening. Why the birth rate is falling everywhere. Everywhere, Mark. What's happening? And why the birth rate is precipitating in the white world. I will try to give an answer in the last 5 minutes of my talk that will be short. I beg your pardon because, as Tatiana said, I have not been invited to speak in Berlin in the last 10 years, and all of a sudden I am invited to speak in 2 places simultaneously. So I have to go. But I want to tell you something. I want to try to answer the question, what is happening? And my answer is, what is happening is that the white race that does not exist is launching a worldwide genocide. The genocide is not happening only in Gaza. I mean, I think that it's time to say that Gaza is the place of a genocide also in Germany. I know that in this very liberal country, a friend of mine called Yanis Varoufakis has been obliged to renounce to his talk. He has been stopped to the border. I know that an American professor called Nancy Fraser has been forbidden to give a talk at the Humboldt University. I know that many cases, but this is a liberal country. Anyway, now I have not been stopped at the border. And that is already something. I think that everybody now would be ashamed to say that, no, there is no genocide in Gaza. Genocide is under our eyes. It's so evident, so clear, that we cannot go on denying the reality of the genocide. But this genocide is not a special gift that we and our allies, of course, the Israeli, are giving to the Gazawi. No, it's not only there. The genocide is deploying slowly, day by day, all along the line that divides the south from the north of the planet. The genocide is underway in the Rio Grande, at the Mexican border. The genocide is underway in the Mediterranean Sea. The genocide is underway in the border between Belarus and Poland. It is underway in the forests between Bosnia and Croatia, and so on and so on. Everywhere, the white race is confronting the effects of the destruction that colonialism has produced during the last 5 centuries in every place. The genocide is underway. So what's going to happen next? And I have the sentiment that this genocide is linked with another process that is every day more visible in the Western world. This process is a process of disintegration. The genocide is provoked by the clear perception of the fact that we are a civilization of old people. And believe me, growing old is horrible. Growing old means becoming aware of the fact that you are going to die soon, and most of all, that you are impotent. Impotence is the mark of old age, but impotence is also the mark of the Western civilization. You know, when I say impotence, I mean the end of that kind of power that for 5 centuries has given to the white civilization the ability to govern the infinite complexity of things. You remember Niccolò Machiavelli, probably, in The Prince, at the paragraph number 25, he says that the prince power is a force that is able to submit fortuna. In the Latin sense, fortuna means the complexity of reality, of human and natural events. So, power, the prince, is the ability to submit fortuna, which is a female. So she likes to be submitted and to be beaten. You know, Machiavelli was a genius, of course, and you see from this work that describes very well everything of modern bourgeois ability to submit the women and nature and labor and so on and so on. But now, growing old, senescence, senility is destroying this ability to submit the female, which actually is rebelling in the sexual form, in the natural form, in the form of a complexity of reality that we are less and less able to submit to our power. So what can we do? In order to find an answer, I have read another of my beloved authors, whose name is Gunther Anders. You know Gunther Anders, of course, better than me. Unluckily, I cannot read Gunther Anders in his language because I don't read German, and he is not so translated in Italian. And he says the Third Reich was a dress rehearsal for totalitarianism and for the cult of functionality. Nazism aimed for a world where technology would dominate humans, leading to a 1,000 years Reich that would eclipse even the horrors of the Third Reich. Where is the 1,000 years Reich? I think that we are witnessing the emergence of this new 1,000 years long in the illusions Reich. It is the new alliance of the white dominators of the world. And I think that Israel is the heart of darkness, of the Third Reich that is coming. I don't know how long Israel will be able to wage its war against reason, against international right, against law, against humanity. It is doing this. It is going to doing this tomorrow and the day after. Then what? I don't have time and I have not ideas to answer this question. What I know is that even if I can do nothing to stop Nazism, at least I want to understand and speak the truth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Berardi. Okay, so I have my notes which speak to the subject of today, and also I want to focus on Gaza a little bit within the framework of talking about illiberalism. So we can talk about the rise of authoritarianism today in Europe, in the United States, or across the so-called democratic West without first looking clearly and unflinchingly at the ongoing genocide in Gaza. A genocide carried out by Israel and fully backed, armed, and justified by the United States, Germany, and Western governments. To discuss the resurgence of the far right, the normalization of fascist rhetoric, or the erosion of liberal democratic values without naming this complicity, it will be a political and moral distortion and a failure in our capacity to analyze and to offer even counter strategies to this rotting decay. Gaza, one can say, is not peripheral to the story of contemporary authoritarianism. It is the stage in which its most violent expressions, as Bifo had said, are being rehearsed, exported, and made acceptable. Since the end of 2023, and continuing to this very moment, Germany, a country that solemnly professes its commitment to never again, as we all know, has approved arms export licenses to Israel worth 485 million euros. These exports have included a broad array of military equipment, firearms, ammunition, weapon parts, electronic systems, armored vehicles, and more. Technologies of surveillance, occupation, and most urgently and unmistakably, death. According to numerous United Nations agencies and international human rights organizations, over 14,000 children have been killed in Gaza until now. That number alone is an ethical abyss from which no civilization could ever look away. UNICEF and Save the Children have called it an unprecedented massacre where children comprise over 50% of the casualties, a figure unmatched in the modern history of warfare. The Israeli genocidal war unleashed on Gaza goes beyond the loss of life. It signals the erasure of the present and the annihilation of a future if it continues. Schools, playgrounds, universities, hospitals, shelters, and places of worship, all deliberately targeted, all reduced to rubble. Gaza today is not simply besieged, it is being unmade, dismembered, not only by the bombs and bullets, but through the complicit bureaucracies and policies of the liberal Western democracies that proclaim themselves defenders of human rights. No one can now claim anymore, after 20 months, we did not see, least of all, the media apparatus, the political elites, and the intellectuals of this continent. The footage is public, the documentation is overwhelming, but we now know this is no longer about ignorance, it is about racism, it's about profit, imperial legacy, and capital gain. Just this past week, the European Legal Support Center filed an emergency motions with the administrative courts of Frankfurt and Berlin to block the transit of Israeli military drone components. Skylark drones, manufactured by Al-Bayt system, notorious for their role in targeting civilians. These components were being transferred from Budapest to Tel Aviv, mind you, on a civilian El Al passenger flight, departing from Frankfurt Airport. And within 48 hours only of the Madeleine flotilla seizure in international waters and the kidnapping of its crew, the 12 courageous volunteers, 3 Italian military transport aircraft flew to Israel, followed by another one from Slovakia. So all of them from the European Union. So European countries are swamped with the erasure of the existence of Palestinian people, but also many other peoples in the world. The relationship between arms and arm deals among these Western powers is not incidental to the genocide, also the one unfolding in Gaza, but the other ones which Berardi has mentioned. It is its fuel. The military economy is not operating in the background. It is at the very heart of what makes this genocide possible, continuous, and profitable. Since the start of the genocide on Gaza, the global arms trade has surged to heights unseen in decades. In 2023, the combined revenues of the world's top 100 arms company reached $632 billion, a 4.2% increase from 2022, a historic peak tied directly to the ongoing conflicts and including Ukraine. And in 2024, global military spending rose to an unprecedented $2.72 trillion, making a 9.4% increase. And it is the steepest increase post-Cold War, so a jump from the post-Cold War. Israel, meanwhile, has climbed rapidly in the global ranking of military importers from the 47th to the 15th in just a decade. And Germany plays a central role in this economy of violence as Israel's second largest, after the United States, arms supplier. Germany is responsible for around 30% of Israel's major arms imports between 2019 and 2023. And as the Italian philosopher Maurizio Lazzarato, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, writes, and I'm quoting him, since the 20th century, war has become more than just a means of resolving conflicts between states and classes. It has had a direct economic function, for it plays the same role that the great inventions, the steam engine, railways, the automobiles, once did. arms expenditures have become a permanent element in the stimulation and control of the economic cycles. He adds, war and not the market constitutes the truth of our present, end quote. So these are not anymore theoretical insights. Gaza, as one place, is a laboratory where the truth, or this truth, is being enacted. The dismemberment of people becomes part of a broader system of economic stroke and a world order that is showing its real imperial face. And we know this is not new, of course. Capitalism has always been the other face of colonialism, as our guest speaker here today had written, and I'm quoting you, the history of colonialism is a history of land predation. Historically, it targeted resource-rich places to fulfill the needs of Western accumulation. Millions of men and women were exploited and subjugated to colonial rule or deported to the territories of the colonizing power. It is impossible to describe the formation of the industrial capitalist system in Europe without considering that this process was preceded and accompanied by the violent subjugation of non-European territories and the enslavement of millions of people, end quote. So the war on Gaza is part of a long arc of capitalist and colonial logic, adapted now into the language of security, counter-terrorism, humanitarian invention, even liberal democracies. But behind that language lies the same logic of dispossession, racial hierarchy, and profitable destruction. 100 years of resistance to colonialism in Palestine, and now a genocide carried out in full view of the world, have shattered any remaining illusions about the current world order and the powers we are up against. As again, Bifo has claimed, and I'm quoting him, Gaza has become the symbol of the tremendous epoch in which we live, because Israeli genocide is the symbol of contemporary hyper-colonialist violence, end quote. The solidarity movement that has risen around Palestine has opened a crucial political horizon. It is not simply or not only a reactive movement of outrage. It can offer, and it offers, a strategic, maybe affective, and epistemic shift. One can argue if we are keen to listen and maybe learn and do some difficult work. Palestine is no longer just a cause over there. It has become a prism, a lens through which the inner architecture of imperial democracies is laid bare. So to stand with Palestine in the heart of the metropole, here, like here in Berlin, but in many other metropoles, is not only to denounce the crimes Israel is committing, it is also to confront the total system. A system of surveillance, a system of racialization, censorship, capitalism, and militarized policing. The confrontation is not symbolic, or it is not symbolic anymore. It is material and increasingly dangerous. So never before has standing with a just cause been so costly and yet so intimate to millions. Those who stand with Palestine today know what they risk. Employment, safety, maybe border crossing, public standing, relationships, etc. And yet they persist. Millions out there persist. Because in this moment where law collapses, human rights discourse fails, where the so-called international order also shows its obscene face, something else is happening. There is an event of exposure. And what is at stake are not only human lives that we need to save, but also the very possibility of a future, the very possibility of justice and dignity in our times. And yet, despite the propaganda machines, the disinformation networks, the money laundering media platforms, the arms deals, the billionaire plots, and the coordinated campaigns to criminalize solidarity, the dominant narrative is losing its grip. And this is not only about Israel. Palestine has pushed the entire global system also to reveal a face, naked and authoritarian and shameless, from the crackdown on student encampments in the United States to recent abductions, from dismissals and blacklists to bans and deplatforming, from the harassment and beating of peaceful demonstrators to the repression of even UN workers, including here in Germany, the system is being exposed. So perhaps the essential lesson that Gaza has given the world is this exposure, that the world order is not only broken, it is maybe actually functioning as it was supposed to be functioning, as it was designed to be functioning, but a system that is protected by the empire, or where the empire is actually protected, where capital is armed, and where even starvation is being calculated. The siege on Gaza lays bare the pact between the nation states and capital and the deep interdependence of militarism, fascism, and economic greed. Are we able, however, to recognize as students on campuses across the globe and protesters in the streets have done relentlessly for the past 2 years, that this moment maybe is drawing a clear map of global confrontation, that there is something being taught to us, something to read about the fault lines of our times, that a clarity has emerged, one picked up in the streets and the encampments and the grassroots movements that has grown exponentially in response. Are we able to see what this moment demands of us, not in the abstract, but in the terms of strategy, commitment, and a vision? Looking beyond the violence to perceive the political clarity or the revolutionary insight and the solidarity-driven world building that it reveals? Or will we remain paralyzed, unable to propose a thought, let alone a strategy, equal to the urgency of this moment? I go back to the same article by Lazzarato, and I bring up a quote which I think might be interesting to discuss with you here on stage. So he says, and I'm quoting him, "The contemporary situation, beyond the impasses of critical thought, once again presents itself as a possible Leninist moment. It is still war that acts as a mighty accelerator of conflicts and potential ruptures. But yet, Lazzarato observes that we are faced with a moment in which the Western critical thought, which lacks the lucidity or obstinacy or determination and class hatred of the enemy, is therefore, this kind of thinking might be devoid of any strategy." End quote. So in early 2024, more than 300,000 Palestinians marched through the ruins of Gaza, attempting to return to homes already reduced to rubble in the north, despite the fact that 90% of the residential buildings had been destroyed. In the most catastrophic of conditions, we witness yet a society that insists on life. Journalists continue to report after 250 of their colleagues have been killed. Teachers teach under collapsed ceilings. Medics operate without medical supplies or any humane conditions. Children learn in tents. Parents mourn and resist at once. Citizens document their own death. And a people refuses erasure actually in real time. This is not only a resistance, it is also a philosophy of survival, a philosophy of dignity, of radical presence in the face of annihilation. So what we then do here from afar, what we offer in return, and what kind of future are we daring from here also to imagine? What political forms are we building? What languages are we shaping? Can we carry these legacies of the resistances into our institutions, into our movements, and into a collective thought? These are questions that I have, and I continue to have, and I want to open them here in conversation with you. and I will end with this. I don't know if there's, yeah, I'm on time. Because you have written that there is a central crisis in our time. It's not the violence of the capital or the empire, but the fact that we lost the capacity to think in internationalist terms. So I wonder if Palestine is demanding, and maybe it's demonstrating, and I'm talking here not only Palestine as a geography, but the actual solidarity movement that has risen and maybe connected people all around the globe. Has it recovered this capacity, and does it have a way that we can follow? Thank you.
You know, I am in a difficult situation, not very nice. You know why? Because I am supposed to persuade you or someone else that there is no way out. And I do not want to do that. I am persuaded of something that does not need to find alliance. I go alone. I go alone. Where to go? Where can I go alone? I remember that 60, 50 years ago, me with many other people all over the world were marching against the American war in Vietnam and hoping that Vietnam was the beginning of a worldwide revolution for socialism or something like that. In a certain sense, we were wrong. That is clear. But now I have the impression that thousands and thousands of people who are marching for Palestine against the Israeli genocide are doing that with a different animus, with a different soul, with a different perception and imagination. What is leading this movement is despair. Despair is, in my perception, the only human sentiment at the present. Hope means nothing. That is the point. You know, also in the years of the Second World War, in the most horrible times of the human history, young people were imagining a future of socialism, of democracy, of something. Now, those who die in the Ukrainian trenches, like those who die in Palestine, in Cisjordania, in Sudan, in Congo, in the Mexican border, those who die today don't think that there is a future for them or for someone else. So what? I will be frank. I think that the only future belongs to this new generation that has, consciously or unconsciously, decided that the human race does not deserve to be continued. The refusal of procreation, the massive refusal of procreation, this is the future that I see. I'm sorry of that. And I don't want to persuade anybody of this.
Yeah. I understand you're not an Aristotelian. No persuasion. Okay. Despite the fact that it's a conversation between philosophers, so Aristotle should be here somewhere. So what do you think of the quote I had about from Lazzarato? Because it's one thing to say the world is in a very bad shape, and there are genocides indeed in many places, especially in the global south. And it's another thing, like our role, people who are thinking and writing and analyzing and understanding. I think Lazzarato is saying something different. It's not about giving people hope or giving people despair. And I, by the way, don't agree with you that there is only despair. But back to the role of the critical theory or philosophy, doesn't it have to actually think about, so it's not the people who are marching who have to come with this socialist world. They will as well. They have their own strength and ideas and imaginations towards what kind of future they want. But shouldn't there be an actual thinking about what kind of future we want instead of just giving people despair?
I don't think so. I don't think that the function of critical thinking is working for finding a solution or a future. The role of the critical thinking is understanding, interpreting reality. You remember that...
I'm just going to interrupt you for a second, because many of those critical theorists, they are proclaimed Marxists. So let me rephrase and ask you, shouldn't Marxists be actually thinking about what kind of future we want, not only in terms of criticism?
11th thesis on Feuerbach, the most well-known of the sentences of Marx, he said, so far philosophers have interpreted the world. Now it's time to change it. I've been trusting these words for many years of my life, but these words mean nothing. I mean, first of all, because interpreting is an act in itself. Interpreting gives us the possibility of relating to the unavoidable. The unavoidable, that is the point. We must speak the unavoidable. Then I remember that many times, probably most of times, the unavoidable does not happen because the unpredictable prevails. So, yes, I wait for the unpredictable, but I cannot pretend to know that there is hope, there is a solution. What I see now, my task, your task, our task, first of all, is understanding, interpreting, observing reality, imagining a development of the present. What I see now is genocide, disintegration of the Western civilization, and a situation in which there is no a solution. The only solution that seems to appear is a sort of self-obliteration of the human race. Is it something that we can go around and... No. So I try not to speak with anybody except when Tatiana invites me to do that. This is all. I know that Maurizio Lazzarato has brilliant ideas about the revolution. But I remember the President Mao Zedong, who said that the situation is chaotic, great disorder under the sky, the situation is excellent. That expression was very exciting for me many years ago. And I would repeat today, the situation is absolutely chaotic. There is no solution inside the present frame of capitalism and so on. So the situation is excellent. Unluckily not, because the point is, what about subjectivity? When Mao spoke of subjectivity, he imagined the possibility of a worldwide movement against, towards communism. Today, if I look at subjectivity, I see depression. I see a generation that has been obliged to forget about solidarity. Solidarity is nowhere in the new generation. That is the point.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. What, is it obvious that we disagree? No, I mean, we do disagree. I think, yeah, well, there is this solidarity movement, and again, I talk about Palestine as an example, but there are social movements and feminist movements and youth movements all around the world, and I'm especially familiar with and interested in the ones that are happening in the global south. But I think how people have risen in the past 2 years against the Israeli genocide on Gaza is a beautiful example how people still care, how they actually put their lives on the front line, like the people who just sailed on the flotilla, 12 from all over the world, to show that there is something in us as humans that does connect, that it's important to have solidarity and to show solidarity. But there are also other movements for Congo, for Sudan. I know of them here in Berlin. So I do think that solidarity exists now. Maybe we need to talk about how to make it more radical solidarity, not in a way where we just pay lip services for the people we believe in or want to be in a movement with, etc. Thinking about radical solidarity in different ways. The situation we are in is really dire and really inhumane and difficult, but I mean, yeah, I think there is a beautiful solidarity out there. It's growing. It's not enough. It needs to grow. It needs to be more strategic, and that's why I'm often preoccupied with how can we move from not just being in the streets, because in the streets also you are being beaten, you are being harassed, etc., to going and organizing within the within closed rooms, within institutions, in different ways. Yeah, I guess it's a moment to. He needs to leave in 2 minutes, or we end in 2 minutes. Because they were showing me 2 minutes. 50. Okay, so we take questions or maybe comments from the audience. Yeah, sure. Okay. The floor is. Yeah, we have already someone from the back.
Thank you for bringing this weird confrontation on stage to let us think about. Sorry?
I need to see your
okay. I will speak with you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I really appreciate reading your work, and I don't want to contest you or get into conflict with you, but I'm also disagreeing, and I think that what you have kind of presented on the stage to some extent is the collapse of the white empire and the enthusiasm to fight against it by the global south, And that I'm not so discouraged by the growing solidarity to try to stop the genocides. And you brought up the Vietnam situation. Nixon was toppled. Unfortunately, Kissinger wasn't. It took many years before he just died of old age. But the Vietnam struggles, I didn't live through that. But if I look back on it, the people who did believe in resistance to it, actually in the end were somewhat victorious. And I think that in the same situations that we see now before us, if we stick to it, we keep building our solidarity, there's a lot that we can still accomplish, and it's the empires that are dying, not the solidarity.
Franco, ciao. Many years. We were in many lectures of your of encounters in the past. My question is, what do you think is what kind of fascistic desire is this? What is happening now? Fascistic desire. And if you had read Masumi's book. And the personification of a kind of empty floating signifier of the leaders that we have now? This would be my question. Thank you.
Right here. So basically, for me, it's not mostly about hope, but the disillusionment of what hope is. And which hope are we talking about? Us fighting right here, or the people living in Congo, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in all of those countries? Because there's a huge difference in what we consider as solidarity and people who are living through everything that they are living through. And it's not necessarily hope that drives, and I would say us, because I left very recently from there. We understand the reality that is dire. We understand everything that is happening. We see it. It has been our reality since we were born, and parents and grandparents before that. What drives us is a sense of belonging. What drives us is a sense of justice. We don't need hope because we understand what is happening in that sense. And the solidarity that is happening right now across the world, it's not about the understanding that we need. It's more about a movement with our limited capacities we cannot reach. This is what we are looking for. We are looking for numbers. We are looking for reach, for louder messages, for people who can actually impact decision makers to actually make those changes. And as Yasmeen said, the organizing of the movements that are happening and how we can deal with that. So from this perspective, and especially the word that you said about impotence, there is a cycle in that where we reach that point and then we regenerate. And I think there is no end to that. So from this perspective, how would you see the people in those countries, not from a perspective of an outsider, but inside that place? How would you really view that in that sense?
I start from the last question, which was not a question at all. It was an answer. And it was an answer that I share, that I agree with. But if I understand well, the point is that in the past many times we have thought, we have tried together to transform reality and to go beyond capitalism and racism and so on. Now, it's not so much about hope. It's much more about sharing a condition. And what is the possibility for people who share the same condition of being oppressed, threatened, and in my opinion, the possibility is desertion, going away, escape. War is back, and is back to stay. I don't think that the Ukrainian war will finish in Ukraine. I don't think that the rearmament launched by the European Union is going to finish well. No, it will open the door to war and war and war. So what are we supposed to do when war has taken the place of the king? To avoid war, to escape, to desert, to defect, to quit. I think that many people are quitting and preparing to quit. I see the most large attempt to quit in the decision not to generate the victims of the climate collapse, the victims of the coming nuclear war, the victims of slavery that is becoming the normal form of production everywhere. This is a positive project. Let's go away. Probably the human history is over. We are critters, suggests Donna Haraway. We are critters means we are no more able to make our life human. Our life cannot be human because ferocity has taken the upper hand. I mean, it's difficult for me to say this, what is the fascist desire, what is the empty signifier. Are we really facing fascism nowadays? I don't think so. You know, fascism was a movement of young people, of excited young people who wanted to expand, to conquest. Now, the reality of Europe particularly is not young people, it's very old people. Also young people are old people who do not have any future. That's the point. I have to quit. A sign that says that I have 5 minutes.
Yeah, maybe there is a last question for him before he leaves, and then I'm here if you want to ask me questions.
Go close. Okay, wait. Hello. So, I will pose a question to Yasmeen, if I may, which might be also interesting and also maybe you have, yes, exactly. But I'm interested because, Yasmeen, you have been referring to strategy numerous times. And I assume that you actually have a strategy, or like that you have an opinion at least about strategy. So my question is, also because of capitalism and fascism, we are seeing now that we have kind of in the present moment, the attack goes to those capitalist institutions that are the welfare institutions or, for example, the law institutions, right? And in the Palestine movement, we refer ourselves to international law, which if you have heard me 2 years ago, I would say that law is part of the problem, not part of the solution. My imaginary at the moment is to defend international law and not the proletarian revolution. Huh? So my question is, right, unfortunately, it was the proletarian revolution, as you know, many years. So my question is a bit, I know that we cannot overcome fascism, yeah, without overcoming capitalism. And at the same time, I'm in a conundrum to having to defend the status quo in order to survive, because I think, by the way, we do things not because we are hope, but because we want to just survive. So that is my question. If it does not, is your strategy, you can also answer differently, but I would be really interested to hear what you say about strategy and how to defend and at the same time imaginary something else.
I beg your pardon and I go. Where is Maddy? Oh, wow.
Hello, I'm the new Franco Berardi. So I will also facilitate a bit the situation, but you just already got your question, so now all the questions would go to Yasmeen.
Okay, I wanted to say two things. The first, thank you very much, Zena, about the comment on hope. I kind of like heard within the lines that it is indeed sometimes hope is overrated in a sense where, as you figured out when I gave my comment to at the beginning, I gave an example of how the people of Gaza had gone the beginning of this year back from the south to the north, just the moment the bombardment had stopped. And I do agree with you that there is something of belonging and belonging to the land that brought people, despite the destruction and despite they were exhausted, and there is nothing but rubbles that awaits them in the north to actually go there. So there is obviously a difference between how we from here see what's happening there, but it definitely does mean that we need to be also looking and inspired by how people defend their lives and not just, give up or think we need to wait until we have hope in the future in order for us to actually move. So regardless of what kind of desire we have, to use that term, is it to end the suffering? Is it to have justice? Is it to think 2 years ahead of now, or is it to think about this very moment? I guess in times of genocides and when the situation is really dire, most probably many of us will be doing very similar things, and that's taking action. And I mean, I hoped that this part of the conversation with Berardi was going into that, that direction, but I guess we do disagree on how we have maybe thinking about despair. And I think that even if you have despair, that does not necessarily paralyze you. So to the question about strategy, well, again, I mean, my hopes for this solidarity movement and other solidarity movements, that it does develop strategies. So it's not necessarily one strategy. And the first step that is necessary is to see and to have some clarity. To have some clarity even within the lines of what you have mentioned as we are being tortured by colonialism and by capitalism, and yes, there is a future after capitalism, and yes, it is part of the problem that we need to face and understand, again, from the language of Lazzarato, from the language of other thinkers, to understand the enemy, right? Not to think that, okay, we're just gonna face down this war or face down that conflict, and that's it, because conflicts is the story of capitalism in order to generate more money. So I think, unfortunately, this is not being understood everywhere, and this is not being talked about in these terms everywhere. And the moment we dislodge and disconnect certain movements that are happening around the globe, or even just in the region, right, in the Middle East, we don't have this clarity. So for sure, we are not going to have a common understanding or a common strategy. So thinking about alternatives, I mean, I guess people use different tactics. So what you have alluded to as in using the law, it's a tactic, right? So yeah, people might be skeptical about what the law can give them and what courts can give them, but still they use it as a tool, they use it as a tactic, not necessarily full in believing that this is the place to do it. The same thing with other institutions. Until these institutions fall, people will still go to contest in different parliaments, in different courts, in different so-called democratic institutions, with the same fervor that they're going to say so-called. So you're going to say so-called and then go inside and have your case raised, and then go outside and talk about and against this institution. I don't think this is contradictory, and I don't think this is wrong in terms of, as long as I know what is my enemy, and as long as I know who is my movement and how I am moving forward, I think many tactics can be discussed, right? We can disagree and agree and change our minds and move forward, knowing what is being happening. So, I mean, these are my few thoughts on the subject. So maybe others have, ideas, comments, or questions, if there is anything. Do we need to finish? Okay.
Maybe I also want to ask you something, and then, because I think also we spoke a lot about tactics and strategies, but in terms also of feminist thinking, maybe it's also important to speak about situated situations, situated experience, and for me makes really big importance here, and very happy that you are with us because you also come from Palestine, and so this gives you a very important situated perspective. So I also wanted to ask you, what is the situation for you or your group here? Because you are also doing a lot of important initiatives. Also let's speak about us, you know. How do you experience the presence with Febrayer, with the initiatives you do? Can you build up also your own resistance, if you want, or your own civil rights that are needed to be in this present.
Yeah, so I very much feel the answer of Zena, which is about survival, right? So some moments you are very excited about doing certain stuff, that you want to connect, that you want to publish, that you want to think, that you want to theorize. But at other moments, you are thinking about surviving, and survival moments tend to have also like a different way, I guess, of doing things and what they call. And every time I feel like, okay, this is a difficult day, a difficult month, a difficult moment, I immediately tune in to see also what the people of Gaza and people in the West Bank, but especially in Gaza, are doing, and how they nonetheless surviving within the dire situation they are in. But if you are talking about here in Berlin, I guess most of the audience, you are very knowledgeable of what is happening in Germany. And I had this small conversation with Berardi when we met, and he's like, Germany is weird, I don't understand it. And I'm afraid that this is the way how Germans get by. They play that nobody understands them, so it's fine. And then fascism can continue, racism can continue, and supporting genocide can also continue. But yeah, I guess partly being shocked that after 20 months, they're just today supported the Israeli attack on Iran. I mean, I guess most of you have heard the horrible news. Israel just the rogue state wants to put the whole area on a blast and throw us all into hell. They attacked Iran this morning, and then fully backed by the empire, the United States, which supposedly didn't know about it, but now is fully behind it. And Germany, and they again invoked the self-defense. They again said the only nuclear power actually is Israel, is actually attacking another country, another nation state, because they want to maybe develop one, which according to all reports, they don't have it yet anyway. So yeah, I think we live in the moment, and we try to do the best that we can. And yes, I guess there is something especially heartwarming about the many feminists and feminist movements we are connected with, and that they managed to build this solidarity before. And I guess the moment when the genocide happened, there was already a lot of strategies and a lot of tactics and a lot of legacies, let's put it this way, that we had developed, were there already since years, that have been used and are being used in order to make sure we continue resisting.
So are there other questions for Yasmeen? Also, we should not forget there is an audience online. Yes, then we can also ask from the online world what's the comment and questions.
I have, hi, I'm Felipe, I'm from Brazil, and I would like to add a parallel perspective maybe to colonialism, xenophobia, genocide, like this homicidal drive based on the myth that if you exploit, oppress, and annihilate the other, you get better, your life will get better. It's a myth, it's a lie, but it works in some cases. But in my country, in Brazil, I think we are pioneers and world champions in oppressing, exploiting, and annihilation of our own people. And I think there is a kind of another myth. There is maybe a mirror to the white supremacist idea of great replacement. And this mirror is that those in power, those in economic and political power, they are now even accelerating into the myth that if they can replace labor for machines, their lives will be better. Maybe they'll go to Mars and never come back. But all of that, I think these two parallel trends, this kind of suicidal drive of a people that annihilates its own, and the homicidal drive of a people that annihilates the other, create a situation that I wouldn't call despair, in the sense that, or maybe in different generations. I have, many siblings. I have a lot of siblings, and I have 2 kids, and nephews and nieces. And I see a different movement along the generations, from my parents, who were kind of founders of the Workers' Party in Brazil, that are now disillusioned, depressed, maybe leading a bit to despair, to my generation that has a bit of anxiety of what will happen with the genocide and with the self-annihilation, climate change and everything, to a younger generation of some of my sisters that are in the kind of generation of the rebellion, and we have to do something because it's our last moment before humanity collapses. But I think I'm more scared of what happens next to a younger generation, that I don't see despair, I don't see rebellion. I see what I wrote about climate fatigue, or this sense that, capitalism, realism, nihilistic hedonism, or hedonistic nihilism, this idea that there's nothing you can do. And if you go to, where I live in Berlin, but I work a lot with different communities in Brazil. If you go to a small town in Brazil, they say, what's the point of organizing labor? What's the point of creating some kind of environmental movement here in our location, because nothing will change. Power is against us, the police is against us, economic powers are against us. So if I just resort to my own, my phone, and I see this happening everywhere, my phone gives me a kind of a response to the sense that could be transformed into anxiety, that could be transformed into despair, that could be leading to organizing. But I don't see that happening, and I see this reality being captured, and even this revolt drive completely numbed down. And I'm talking about, under 18-year-olds. And maybe it is a thing of this generation, but I don't remember. In my generation, I don't remember when I was 14, I was kind of, rebelling, revolting, and I don't see this happening that much in this generation. Maybe, or hopefully I'm wrong. But I don't know. I would like to ask you for those comments on these two parallel situations of this homicidal and suicidal drive, and how that can change over generations. Because I see 20-year-olds are still trying to organize, 20, 25-year-olds are still trying to revolt, organize, do something. But I see younger than that, people just saying, what's the point?
If you are expecting me to answer that, I don't have an answer. There is one of the things Berardi mentioned about, and I wanted to ask him about, but there was no enough time to do all my questions to. During his talk, he talked about the newness. So what's new? What's liberal? What's illiberal? What new? And I think partly when we look at new, it's, yes, partly it's reality, but partly it's interpretation. So in a way, he's right to say interpreting the world is already a form of action. But one, you need to be aware that it is a form of action. So you're not just putting words out there without knowing that you are now creating a certain way of looking at the world. That means you are also shaping that world. So by knowing that, you have done something, yes, but obviously I would want to push further than this. So yes, this is part of the story, and it is scary. And I have son myself who, of course, love his screen time and adores it, and it's something he cherishes and waits for. But I also go to demonstrations, and I see people coming from the schools to the demonstrations. And I guess it is better to send those kids to demonstrations or send them to any kind of community or political intervention and engagement, better than just being consumerists and sitting there being an object of a screen, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say, and I was trying to also argue here a little bit with Bifo, it's the way we want to also see the world. It's not like we being blind about how bad it is, but yeah, thinking about the people who are surviving. So yes, he is right to say that people like he says, people are having less kids in the global north. But the world is not the global north. The world is not the global north. So maybe people are despaired, they don't have anything in the global north where there's saturated, capitalism saturated people with stuff, right? But that doesn't mean there's no working classes and there is no poverty, there is no etc., right? But this is not the stories of the global south. People still have kids. And people still want to have a future, and they still believe there is something beyond despair and beyond. And that's not to say people are angels or evils. I mean, right? This is not the dichotomy. And I'm very well aware also of the dictatorships and the authoritarian regimes that are reminiscent of in the global south, but interpreting and understanding the world is part and parcel of what we want to do, and we want to dig for the newness. It's not like you go and see it or find it. You need to dig for it. You need to make it. You need even to invent it sometimes in order for things to be better.
This gives me hope for the things we do here. We are digging and digging. I would say let's try to see if there is a question from the online world that we still didn't involve. First we do one here and then the online world.
Okay, I have one more question.
Then we have to close.
Hello. So my question is about solidarity on a subjective level. And I'm wondering if the refusal for reprocreation kind of gives a space for a new form of solidarity. So I mean, I'm wondering if solidarity is sort of broken or is to the contract of reprocreation. So there's no desire to reproduce anymore. So that form of solidarity is lost. And I do think that younger people are kind of trying to create a new form of solidarity through friendships, for example. And these forms of relating to one another are very small and more like move in a different pace, maybe. But I do think there's a form of like remodeling happening of what solidarity could mean. And also new forms of support structures are maybe built. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a form of loss or if that is a form of despair. So I'm more wondering if, yeah, what solidarity could mean now. And yeah, that's my question.
Can we combine it also with the virtual question?
Yes. Hello. I think you have covered most of the questions there in different ways. What was left here, I don't know, is also a question for Bifo. If you have a point of view on it, when he was saying that white superiority is crumbling, that it seems to be growing stronger nowadays, but maybe this is a difference between superiority and ideologies of supremacy is what is crumbling and what's going stronger? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this question definitely for Bifo, because I also disagree. I don't think the white supremacy is crumbling. Again, just looking at the wars, the genocides, and the hyper-capitalism that he himself talks about, I don't think we are there. But maybe he uses different terminologies in terms of how he wants to understand what's happening now versus maybe looking at earlier or historic periods. So I'm not sure I got the question about procreation versus solidarity. So you are saying if we don't procreate, it's a form of solidarity with the world, or other?
Sorry, you have to use the mic, otherwise...
Okay, the commitment for?
We have to repeat, because otherwise the people online don't understand what we are discussing.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't given it a lot of hope, I guess, like before this question of procreation versus solidarity, or solidarity in procreation. I mean, I guess there's a lot of literature out there that, you know, have this way or the other. I feel from the solidarity movements that I know it's not something that people hold on to as central to how they manage and do and perform solidarity. I would say that, and I'm sure people who have arguments with or against in both ways, but it's not something that I felt defines these movements. Not also the feminist movements I'm part in. I guess we need to finish.
Yes, I think now we are at the end, and I really wanted to thank you deeply, Yasmeen, and I want to tell the audience that we will meet here in 20 minutes with the next panel that is about art activism and the rise of illiberalism in Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia. So please come back, and also I hope you will join as member the Disruption Network Club. You will also support us, and we will keep the resistance all together. But thank you, Yasmeen, and thank you also, Franco.